Take me out to the ball game. Yes, welcome back to another new season of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and I have a permanent set of teammates here. And that fourth spot that we're going to have will be a rotating spot. But my new teammates include George Eichhorn. George, welcome back to 108 Stitches Baseball Talk.
Oh, thank you, Scott. Looking forward to the program. And yeah, everybody's excited. The new season right around the corner. Yep.
And next is JT Toth. I met him through Ralph Williams doing the External Bum podcast. And now JT Toth has made himself a permanent member of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. You ready to talk some baseball this year, Mr. Toth?
I am so ready. I want this weather to get going. I always look at the Daytona 500 as my spring breaks. I know when the Daytona 500 gets here, that means that baseball is right behind it. So let's get this going.
All right, well, we're going to do that, but let's let everybody know what we're going to be talking about tonight. Yes, obviously, the recent Hall of Fame selections took place last week. Well, we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about Shohei Ohtani's massive contract and Aroldis Chapman, and time permitting, there might be other things to talk about as well. Let me go over this very quickly. Of course, hi, Will Vogel. Good evening. Glad to have you back, Mr. Vogel. Good stuff. Okay. So I'll let everybody know that that 108 Stitches Baseball Talk is being broadcast around the world. The audio version of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. Please hit the red subscribe button on South Florida YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for more subscribers. Please comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? No problem. Participate in the chat room. After all, Mr. Vogel earned his way back in on a Thursday night for doing exactly that. Or send your topic ideas to southfloridatribune.com. If you want to advertise cost efficiently, no problem. Give me a call at 954-304-4941. We broadcast live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Our website's www.southfloridatribune.com, Twitter/X at Tribune South. Candy Ebling is doing the producing tonight. I have a book out there called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders, available on Kindle and Amazon. It's about old school media versus new school media. And finally, NGBN TV will launch on Roku, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and mobile devices. We just had a sneak peek today, which was unbelievable. We talked about all the different shows that were on there. And I'll tell you, it's going to be a great endeavor that we're looking forward to doing. That right now, the Sports Exchange and Pundit Planet are on there. Who knows if down the road whether or not other shows will be on, but it will be on 85% of the homes in the United States and Canada and 4.1 billion mobile devices. So great start here for us today. All right, well, opening topic is Baseball Hall of Fame. I'll break down the numbers. Each of my crew members, I have a chance to say if it was a right call or not. Adrian Beltre, JT, goes into Cooperstown with a 286 mark, 3,166 hits. 477 home runs, 1,707 RBIs, 21 MLB seasons. 95.1% of the vote is what he ended up getting. He plays for the Dodgers, the Mariners, the Red Sox, and the Rangers. Was this a no-brainer or what, JT?
It definitely was a no-brainer. I did a little bit of did an article for him today on our website. And 15 years old, he's 135 pounds when he signed with the Dodgers. A couple of scouts noticed him, picked him up. And not only did he play the game the right way, he always had fun out there. I mean, anytime you saw Sports Center, ESPN, Beltre was, having fun with a teammate or actually an opponent. He would hit an opponent in the back with his glove and laugh. And he played the game the right way, and he played the game great. He hit for power, was a great defender. He's definitely a no-brainer.
Okay, George.
Yeah, getting 95.1% of the vote is really a high honor. You get into that stratosphere, especially like we said on his first ballot for him, and making it to Cooperstown, definitely deserves it. He is a great career, great player. He could connect with the fans. He was a good guy in the clubhouse, from all I hear, and really an asset for the game of baseball. So that one did not surprise me. I didn't know he was going to get that high a support, but he's worthy of it. He really was. So congratulations to Mr. Beltre.
Yeah, I think the only stat that really comes to mind is the 3,166 hits is really what it comes down to. Yes, the 477 home runs out, but Fred McGriff thankfully got in last year, but Beltray, the 3166 is the thing that always stands out. I'm actually wonder how many more hitters are going to get the 3,000 hits. That's another story. And let's go ahead, George, and read Will Vogel's comments.
Sure. My thoughts on this Hall of Fame class is I like it, but I thought that Wagner would get in this year, but hope he gets in next year. Beltray was a solid offensive and defensive player, and Mauer a good player. Thanks, Will.
Will, I have a feeling you're right. I think Billy Wagner does get in next year. I believe it's isn't it, JT, his last year of eligibility, if I remember right?
I believe so. I believe that out of this year's, there's Helton was on his 6th year, so he was the only one.
Right.
The other two guys that got in were on their first ballot, which was unique for how it's been lately. But to get back to Beltray too, the other thing that's amazing, if you look at his stats, he had a 48 home run season towards the end of his career. I mean, he didn't really stop. He was consistent all the way through. When I did the little article today, he was 19 years old when he cracked in the MLB. He struggled a little bit. It was his worst year, of course. He came up hit like 220, 215. Made a lot of errors at third base, but then he just totally. He was a powerhouse. I mean, he just did little bit of everything. The 3,100 hits. Actually, when I really studied his stats, I was shocked that he had more hits than either the other two guys that we're going to talk about later on in this class. He had the most hits by a good bit.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, he did.
Too.
He did.
Anything you want to add to that, George?
No, I was just going to echo those comments precisely. I mean, like you said, Scott, and you too, JT. Once you get into that stratosphere, 3,000 plus hits, and it's an automatic ticket unless you did something really gravely bad to the game or you cheated, as the writers have withheld some guys who have been so-called cheaters or drug users. So, but yeah, Adrian Beltray, what a great guy. Yeah, a lot of hits, good career.
Well, I know you're referring to the steroids. Is that correct, George?
Yes. Yeah, the steroids era.
Yeah. Don't be nice. Steroids isn't a good thing. Anyways. All right, on to the next one. This one's one of my favorites, too. And I had a chance to meet him out in the Cactus League. Todd Helton, 17 years with the Colorado Rockies, 316 average, 2,517 hits, 369 home runs, it looks like. 79.7%. He was 6th on the ballot with 1,406 RBI. Todd Helton played at Coors Field. You wonder if that'd be a liability to him? No, not really. Todd Helton was a good pure hitter. And when I talked to him, he always referenced the fact that, he, was Peyton Manning. He worked with Peyton Manning over at the University of Tennessee. So the fact that he stayed his entire career with the Rockies, to me, I'm thrilled. I mean, you don't get that a whole lot these days. But Todd Helton was humbled and thrilled. And I was rooting for him hard, and I'm glad it only took him 6 times to get on. With that said, George, go ahead.
Yeah, Todd Helton, what a great career. And obviously, like you alluded to, the Coors Field, there have been some talk about that, but Larry Walker, of course, made it into the Hall of Fame. And our friend Scott and I have a great friend, Tony DeMarco, and Tony had the privilege of covering the Colorado Rockies for a number of years. And I'm sure this was great news for Tony, too. Longtime baseball writer, now retired. But like I said, he was on the beat covering the Rockies during much of Todd Helton's career. And you know what? It took him a little longer, but that's okay. He still got 79.7% of the vote, received 307 votes this year. And I think he's more than deserving. I mean, and it's not just the power stats. I mean, he didn't hit 400 home runs. What'd you say? 369, I believe. But, he still had a great batting average, and really knew how to hit and run. I mean, he's a great athlete.
Well, it's funny how you mentioned that, because I want to go back to Will Vogel. I'll tell you, this kid's got the exceptional baseball IQ, offensive and defensive, but I thought it would take him longer, and Helton thought it would take him longer because writers don't like Coors Field because of the elevation that Larry Walker got into as well. So,
yeah,
and he played there as well. Yeah, great. That's what we think too, Will. But I'm glad that you reinforced what we already were talking about. So good stuff, Will. So with that said, okay, JT, what are your thoughts about Mr. Helton?
I love this class, guys. Honestly, like I have a 24-year-old son, so my son was a big baseball fan growing up, and these are all the guys he got to watch growing up. They played the game so well. Helton, his left-handed swing. I bat lefty in baseball myself. The left-handed swing was precise and beautiful, with some power and some pop. Let's all say too. If he don't get hurt, I believe it was his junior year of college. He got hurt where Manning came in. He was the backup. Manning was the third stringer the year that he got hurt. And then Manning goes on we all know what Manning did. So thank goodness for that injury, because Helton, if he keeps putting up the numbers in Tennessee as a quarterback, you never know what ends up happening. But I really enjoyed watching him play. Just the gap shots he could hit. He was just like George already said, the defense, the hitting. You're getting everything from these three guys in this class, and Helton and Maurer. We're going to get two guys, probably might be the last group of guys coming at the same time that played on one team. And we're not going to get that. We're not going to get that very. You're going to very rarely see that in the future, which is sad, because I think when a guy plays a full season, a full career with one team, it just sings perfect. It's a perfect player. Jeter, you can't really go down on any Hall of Famer that played one team for one team his full career. It just looks that much better when they're in the Hall of Fame.
Mhm.
Well, if that's the case, let's go ahead and have a perfect segue to what you just talked about, okay, JT, and we will move over to Joe Mauer. Let me break down the actual numbers, and then this will bring out another Don Mattingly question, which we're going to get to in a moment. But 15 years with the Minnesota Twins as a catcher, mind you, most of the way. Hit 306, 2,123, 2,123 hits, and obviously ended up with 143 RBIs, 923 RBIs, 76.1% of the ballot in his first time on there. So that begs the question, okay, JT, Don Mattingly's numbers, I don't have them in front of me. If you guys want to research them, go ahead. But they're comparable to Mauer. But I agree with you. He did play his entire career with one city, Minnesota, and those are far and few between nowadays. Although Miguel Cabrera obviously didn't, but you almost seemed like it did with the Tigers. They played the majority of them anyways. Mm-hmm. But, all right, so give me your overall thoughts, JT, really quickly about the Mauer selection.
This guy, athletic-wise, might have been one of the best athletes to ever play baseball. He was a three-star athlete, a three-sport athlete in high school, basketball, baseball, football. He was the only player in the history of the only one ever to do it. USA Today High School Player of the Year in two different sports, football as a quarterback and baseball as a catcher. Struck out one time his high school career, which I found amazing for the number of bats that he had.
Wow.
The guy was a pure hitter. I don't know what you could say. Great defense. I think it was one MVP he won. I got him. I'm getting them mixed up now. I know Mauer and Beltre didn't win an MVP, which was crazy going back to that. And if we were going by the numbers, I'm actually shocked Mauer was lower than Beltre. I thought that Mauer might actually have been a higher percentage of vote than Beltre, just because of what he was able to do for a Twins team that really never had nothing around him in the lineup for a bunch of years. I thought he played a great career. Another one of them guys that you just loved watching play the game, just loved the game. I mean, these are three guys. We are very lucky this year. I mean, this is a great group of guys that all love the game. They all played the game the right way. You never heard any negative things about any of these players. You never heard any drama, nothing going on with their teams. Never any wanting out of their cities. They want to get traded, kind of thing. I love this class a lot, and Joe Mauer to me was one of the best catchers in. I'm not gonna say in my lifetime, but maybe in my son's lifetime, who I was going by as a 24-year-old. He got to watch Mauer grow up, and was a fan. He was a fan of Joe Mauer.
Okay, George.
Yeah, we got a chance to see Joe Mauer a lot, of course. I live in Detroit, and the Tigers are in the same division, as you guys know, with the Twins. So obviously, Joe Mauer had a lot of plate appearances here at Comerica Park in downtown Detroit. And I'll tell you what, you hit it, you nailed it. This guy is a consummate pro. He's not going to cause trouble on your team. He's not going to be a loudmouth in the locker room, and he's going to make his actions on the field stand. You know, like an Alan Trammell type of player, like a guy that, just goes about the daily business of loving the game, passion for the game. And I really think that you guys nailed it. I mean, these three guys here, they all love the game. And Mauer, Yeah, I was a little surprised, but he was above the 75% threshold that puts you in the Hall of Fame, and on his first year of eligibility, I agree. Though I mean, he should have got more support than what he did, even because he was Mr. Twin, no question about it. I mean, you look at a franchise like that over the years, like Kirby Puckett, and you think of Harmon Killebrew and Tony Oliva and guys like Rod Carew. I mean, they got guys that are there and guys that are really there because they love the game. And Joe Mauer certainly is a class act, and I'm happy that he went in. And you're never going to go wrong with somebody like Joe Mauer on your team, obviously.
Well, let me bring up the Mattingly reference. I found it myself. You talk about Mauer at 307, 306, excuse me. Mattingly was 307. His hit totals are 2,153. He ended up having more home runs at 222, runs batted in 1099. So there you go. There you have it. And mind you, he only played 13 years. So if Joe Mauer is going to get in with the numbers he's going to get in, now people have to really look at Don Mattingly. All right, now he does belong in, and he's the perfect reason that you can argue that case. One of these days when I catch up with Mattingly, I'm going to talk to him. Okay, you feel a little bit better now that Joe Mauer got in. It's your turn to get in at some point when the Veterans Committee comes to their senses and bring him in. Well, I just read the numbers. They're very, very, very close to it. So, But I like the fact that you talk about Harmon Killebrew, Kirby Puckett. They have a good tradition over with the Twins, and there's no question you mentioned some pretty good names with Ron Carew. All right, well, last but not least, a guy that all of us should be familiar with because he played in both of our markets. In fact, 3 of the 4 that we're actually in.
Yep.
Jim Leyland turned 79 on December 15th. Great stuff. What do you get for a present? You're going to the Hall of Fame. Not a bad present. He managed for the Tigers, the Marlins, the Rockies, and the Pirates. Managed 3,499 games. 1769, 1728, 506 percentage, won a World Series with the Marlins, albeit they paid for it. But he's in the Hall of Fame, and you know what? I'm glad he's able to do it. Well, go ahead, JT.
Love Jim Leyland. Of course, the several years at Pittsburgh when we had Bonds, Van Slyke, Bonilla, we had the team. I mean, we had 3 years in a row in the National League Championship game. He couldn't pull it out. The one time I will ever argue with Jim Leyland was the hit that we gave up to Cabrera, that he brought in Stan Belinda instead of Tim Wakefield, who had, Tim Wakefield back then could pitch on no days rest because he threw a knuckleball. So I thought they should have brought him in the 9th. But other than that, it was fun. Such a fun guy. He's the only guy that we know of, at least in baseball, that grabbed Barry Bonds in a spring training and started yelling at him and told him to get out of here. He wasn't going to put up with it. And he was that kind of manager. I got to meet him a couple times randomly by chance. My late dad got to meet him, and my dad said it was the greatest thing. He got to smoke a cigarette with Jim Leyland outside of PNC Park, and my dad thought it was amazing. And he was that kind of guy. We used to watch Pirate games as a kid. I was 16 in 1990, so I was going through my sophomore, senior year of high school when the Pirates were real good with Bonds and that. And you would watch him on. It was called KBL back then, but you'd watch him light a cigarette up in the dugout and try to hide it, and he would get caught. He was getting caught all the time. It was just, he was that kind of guy that he was worth watching the game himself. And that was back when I'm very lucky that we had him as a manager back then, even though we didn't win at all.
I met Leland many times. One of the nicest people on the planet. I mean, at the time with the Tigers, of course. I used to go to a lot of spring training games, and he'd be up in the press box when he wasn't managing. And I saw him at the All-Star game in Miami. You just cannot ask for a better person to get in. And I'm glad that he's able to finally enjoy the fruits of his labor to actually get in. So, yeah, Jim Leyland, thankfully he did get in the Hall of Fame, and he's be able to enjoy it in a matter of months. All right, George.
Yeah, Jim Leyland certainly deserved the honor. He was named on 15 out of the 16 ballots. And that's not easy to do. I mean, you got a lot of great names. This list included, just to remind our listeners, guys like Lou Piniella and Cito Gaston and Davey Johnson among the managers. And all 3 of those other guys certainly deserve recognition and maybe someday a trip to Cooperstown as well. But Jim Leyland, passion for the game, passion. He loved the sport. He talked about it all the time. He always was available, like Scott said, to talk to the media, to do interviews, one-on-ones. whenever he could. I mean, sometimes we know that the PR people get in the way of that access, if you will. But Jimmy Leland was loved and adored here in Detroit. I'll never forget when the Tigers clinched a spot in the World Series, and owner Mike Ilitch was already showing signs of his age and that. And Dave Dombrowski was on the stage with Jim Leland, and they were having to almost prop up of Mike Ilitch. He was that bad off as far as his health goes in that stage at Comerica Park, and everybody was just cheering crazy. It was just an unbelievable scene. And Jim Leland, even today, I mean, you can get great advice from him. He's still on the Tigers payroll, by the way, as administrative assistant to Scott Harris, the club's president. So, and that's a tradition that Dave Dombrowski started along with and succeeded by Al Avila and now Scott Harris, where select former Tigers, et cetera, et cetera. But Leland is still counted on today's day and age. I mean, he knows so much about the sport. He loves being with those kids in Lakeland, like you said, Scott, and seeing everybody work out on some of the backfields or even the main diamonds down in Lakeland. And he still loves the sport to today. I mean, what a character for the game. And he loved to smoke those cigarettes, I know, but he's always been a great guy.
Well, let's face the reality. Anytime you get a great mind in your organization, there's nothing wrong with turning to them. It's like an earpiece anyways, a sounding board. You definitely have that there. So more power to the Tigers in that tradition. Two other things I want to get to tonight. Number one, obviously the biggest move in the offseason, Shohei Ohtani going to the Los Angeles Dodgers, $700 million, $680 of it deferred for 10 years. All right, George, Ohtani stayed in Southern California, and now he's going to Dodger Stadium instead of Angel Stadium. Some thoughts about the move?
Yeah, isn't that ironic? I mean, we talked a lot this past year on this show about some of the stops where he could possibly end up, and we threw around teams like New York and Chicago Cubs and Seattle and even San Francisco and San Diego, but LA Dodgers, he can't go wrong. Okay, he obviously loves that area, Southern California, loves the weather, I'm sure. And you're talk about going to a team with such rich history as the Dodgers, and I don't mean rich in the sense of money, but they really are rich. They came from New York, as everybody knows, and moved to the Brooklyn Dodgers to LA. They've had some great teams, some great managers. Walter Alston and Tommy Lasorda come to mind, and it's really it's a great move for him. And it's also a great move for the fans because Los Angeles Angels fans, if you will, some of them really obviously grew attached to him. So now they'll be able to still see him. Their drive will be a little longer, and they'll also be able to watch one of their heroes. So it's sad that the Angels had to say goodbye to him, but I think he picked a really good home. He's getting a ton of money, and he's a smart man to defer a lot of that till the last few years of his contract. So welcome back to LA.
Well, the only difference in his trip to work will be he's just taking a different freeway or two. It's not that big of a deal. Now it depends on what time of the day you go, but knowing him, he probably has a chauffeur and he has all the bells and whistles that he needs to be able to get through the Southern California traffic. He'll be all right. And besides, if you can defer $680 million, you can only imagine how much endorsement money he's getting anyway. So it doesn't matter. I definitely believe he can feed his family or anybody that he cares to feed. Okay, JT. Ohtani.
I'm gonna go a little bit opposite of what George said. I agree that he's a great ball player. Don't get me wrong. Ohtani's one of the top 2-3 players in the game by far and away. I hate this move. I'm in a small market, of course. $700 million for a guy that's had 100 RBIs one time. He has some pop. He had 40 plus homers 2 of the last 3 years. He's injury prone, and that's before even this past his arm problems. He's not going to pitch next year. He's a gimmick. He's a player who's a gimmick. He pitches and he bats. $700 million though. I mean, it's just getting ridiculous. Baseball is really starting to really pull from the haves and the have-nots. It's just getting wider and wider, and it's tough for me to see a baseball team like that do that. And the Pirates and other smaller market teams go out and, when they spend $8 or $9 million on a guy, we act like they're breaking the bank, and it feels like they're breaking the bank. But the guy gets that much money. I love Ohtani. He's great for the game in general. He's in LA. What else could you ask for? I sort of like it because I sort of have this thing going on where I love when the Dodgers have a $400 million payroll and they can't win. It makes me feel good when I see another team pop out like a couple of years ago. It was the Royals, and I love watching teams just come out that aren't in the same stratosphere as these teams. He's going to be a DH for a year, so you're paying. I know you're paying it deferred right now, but $680 million deferred to a guy that literally you don't know how he's going to bounce back arm wise. You don't know what's going to happen, and like I said, he's a little bit fragile when it comes to injuries. You look over his games played early in his career; he was in and out a lot, and he had a couple big seasons in the middle, but then he had the arm problems again last year. But you can't go wrong with him in your lineup, that's for sure. But I don't think he's worth that kind of money.
Well, you're probably not alone when you say that, but there was one team that was going to pay the piper, and it was the Dodgers. So if they think he was worth that, JT, he was worth it. I'm not going to sit here and dispute the reasons why, because you already did a good job doing it for me. But all right, George, give me your thoughts about Ohtani.
I think he's a great ball player, but yeah, I mean, I understand, JT, where you're coming from. I mean, yeah, he has had some injuries, and especially the one that's going to put him on the shelf for pitching. And the thing is, though, you got to remember that baseball's trying to be more appealing to a lot of people. He identifies with the young people, not only the Asian Americans. Okay, there's a lot of other young people that are following the sport. And yeah, if it was up to me, no, you're right. I mean, I would rather see him in another market. I don't mean to be just a gaga over him going to LA, but they've got the money, like Scott said. They've got the payroll. They've got the rich owners. But yeah, I mean, that is an awful lot of money to pay, but he has done well so far in the major leagues, exceedingly well. But the question is always, yeah, can he stay healthy? That's a good point that you make. And we don't know that. We don't know the answer. He had problems last year, and he could have problems down the road. We just don't know. But we all know this, is that he is a ratings grabber. He is going to be featured on national television many, many, many more times, of course, by Fox and by the other networks covering baseball. But I mean, you're going to get a good show with him. He's a showman, and you call him a gimmick, JT. I don't want to call him that, but I mean, I call him more of a showman. But one thing I tell you, he's got to do is he's got to relate more to the fans. I don't know how much he has access to the fans. But Mike Trout was one of those guys that, God bless him, he wanted to concentrate on baseball so much. But remember how he couldn't identify too well with the fans, and Manfred and the higher ups in baseball were concerned about that with Trout. But Ohtani, I think, obviously should be able to identify with the fans, provided they give him opportunities.
Well, we all know the reason why he left the Angels. They weren't winning. Not that they weren't trying to win. You have Mike Trout. They were spending money there. They also was a Mike Rendon or
Anthony Rendon.
Anthony Rendon. Thank you for correcting me on that. Hasn't been worth the money. He doesn't even like the game of baseball. So it's not like the Albert Pujols. The Angels were spending the money. They weren't winning, and the guy wants an opportunity to win, and he didn't get that opportunity across, in Orange County to do it. So I understand his reasons for going. Now he'll see the postseason. You don't want to go down as a player that never sniffed the postseason at all, and the Angels were not headed in the right trajectory. But yeah, you say what you want about him, but he will put rear ends in the seats of Dodger Stadium. Not that they even have a problem doing it anyway.
Right.
So, I mean, and I guess the best thing that can happen is everybody's talking about the have and have-nots. If the smaller market teams are going to win championships, not spending as much money, that's the best thing that can happen for baseball. It's not like a smaller market team can't win, because we've seen over the years the Kansas City Royals and other teams have done it. But, not always. If bigger market teams would win all the time, what about the New York Yankees? They've been out of it for a while.
Yeah.
But it's a story we're definitely going to revisit. But obviously one of our top off-season headlines. Last topic I want to get to tonight, unless you guys have some basic news in your markets, but it'll be very briefly. Well, you talked about JT Pittsburgh not spending a lot, but they did open up the checkbook for at least a year for Aroldis Chapman, whatever he's got left in that arm of his. 1 year, $10.5 million in Pittsburgh. I'm going to ask you, are they excited about that signing in Pittsburgh?
I'm going to tell you something. I think that they signed him. I think that Ben Sherrington signed Aroldis Chapman for the fact that he couldn't get anybody else. He tried to get Sean Manaea. Manaea turned down the Pirates deal. They were trying to get in on Dylan Cease, but the White Sox right now want the Brinks truck backed up to the. They want everything for Dylan Cease right now. The Pirates ain't going to give up the prospect. So he was feeling. I think the signing was just a guy that would come here. But looking at the signing now with David Bednar and Chapman in the back end of that team, if we can get 6 innings now out of our starting pitching / middle relievers, it's going to be tough to beat the Pirates late in the game with a left-hander like Aroldis Chapman, and then you got Bednar. If Chapman's arm is back to even 98, 99 and just got his slider back, I mean, he's not going to throw 103, 104 miles an hour like he used to with the Reds. But I'd say we're a little excited in Pittsburgh, but I think it's like I told you before, it's $10.5 million. We're not used to hearing that number. So it's like, wow, we signed somebody for, we don't do that very often. But I do believe that the Pirates wanted to get a starter with that money, and they just couldn't get one to bite. The rumor was they actually outbid for Sean Manaea, but Manaea turned down the Pittsburgh Pirates. So we're excited to a point, but I think it's tempered. It's tempered. I think people are like, when I first saw the move, I had about 5 buddies on social media say that was a good move 10 years ago, which is, that's a true statement. So, it's a tempered excitement. Let's put it that way.
Well, let's put it this way. You're excited because a big name player decided to go to Pittsburgh and you think he could be an asset. And unfortunately, no disrespect to the Pirate fans or Pittsburgh fans, you haven't had many big names circulate your way to Pittsburgh. So you've got a name. Let's just hope you can do something with that name. All right, George, some quick thoughts about Chapman.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting move as well. I really, this sometimes does happen though. I mean, there are times, but usually you're right, JT. It's usually when you're a little bit closer to being a contender. You're a little bit, perhaps even on the fringe of being in the upper top of your echelon of your division. So, but the fact of the matter is obviously he wanted a good contract. He got one for 1 year, so it was definitely a player's contract. And say what it is, the Pirates are giving it a shot, and even if they couldn't get other starters to come over there or to sign with them. You're right. They got a good bullpen now, the 1-2 punch. And it basically, he made the final decision. Obviously, we have no knowledge of whether any other team offered him anywhere near that amount. But the fact of the matter is Pittsburgh is a good baseball town. You guys have been on a tough sled for many, many years now. And you mentioned Jim Leland used to be there, of course, and Bonds and you got Andrew McCutcheon and Willie Stargell. I mean, what a great franchise city that's been for many, many years, decades.
Right.
Danny. But anyways, Chapman, yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise. You thought he would go to an upper tier team, but hopefully it'll pan out for the Pirates and their fans.
I believe too, if Paul Skeens was ready right now, if Paul Skeens was up here next year, like if we had that guy like a Paul Skeens thrown at the top of he ain't going to start here probably till June at the earliest. If he even comes up at all till real late in the year. But if we had a guy like Skeens and Keller with a couple other guys, we just signed Marco Gonzalez from Seattle. And I would be really excited. I'm like, wow, we got the pitching, but we don't really have the guys that can go 5-6 innings religiously. So it'll be interesting in how and when they use Chapman in that bullpen.
Well, let's go to a comment from Will Vogel. I'll read it. As a Yankees fan, we didn't see a lot of good stuff from Chapman. He could help this young Pirates team, even though he doesn't have the heat he used to have with his pitches. That's exactly what you just said. So, in that sense, there, JT, you and Will Vogel, great minds think alike. So that concludes this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. I'll go to you, JT, real quick. Is there one piece of news that you'd like to get out really quickly? And make it about 10, 20 seconds that we should know about in baseball.
I got real quick, there's a ton of free agents still out there, which is crazy. Justin Turner, he's supposed to be signing soon. You got pretty much position players at every position right now that haven't signed. Reese Hoskins just signed. That was another guy that was out there for the longest time. So there is definitely some talent to be had out there still. So teams like the Pirates, Tigers, teams that don't spend as much money, they have a chance now to, grab a free agent, maybe for a little bit cheaper than what you normally would in the past.
Okay, George, real quickly.
Yeah, we just received word that Jimmy Williams died, the former big league manager. Of course, I remember him with the Blue Jays and the Red Sox, and good guy, 80 years old. So rest in peace, Jimmy Williams, a solid manager over the years in baseball.
Good. I'm glad you brought that up. Right. Well, that does include this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Right now, I'll let JT talk to everybody know how they can get a hold of you. JT, go ahead.
Yeah, JT at draft412.com if you want to get me by email. If you want to get on my website and check out all the draft prospects that we do over at Draft 412, get on www.draft412.com. It will be becoming draftnation.com here in the next couple weeks. So I'll be a Draft Nation employee, not a Draft 412 employee. So that's it. If you want to get a hold of me, talk about football prospects or baseball or basketball or hockey, I'm your man.
And not only that, I work with you on the External Bum podcast on Friday with Ralph Williams from, I think it's 10:30 to 11 o'clock Eastern time, right? Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct.
All right, George Eichhorn, go ahead.
Yep, I can be found at the South Florida Tribune under the Motor City Tribune, where I write columns, and also locally in the Detroit Monitor. You can reach me at San Sports 99 on Twitter, or George Eichhorn under LinkedIn, or geichhorn@yahoo.com. And also, I have a book out there too, and Scott's got a great book out there. And you can find out more about my book, Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. There's a link to it at the end of my sports columns. So great to be on the show here again tonight with you guys.
Well, I'm glad we have 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. It's a show that definitely I've had going on for a long time. I just want to make sure I have the right crew. I feel very confident we have at least three aspects of it. We'll have a rotating person as well as guests. So stay tuned. Monday night is the night that we've decided to bring it on. With that said, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk is being broadcast around the world. The audio version of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube South Florida Tribune. We're striving for more subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? Well, we'll know how to get in there once in a while. We usually have him on Thursday nights. When we do bring him on, he's a good contributor in the chat room as well when he is on the air, but he's a good example of it. But also, please participate in the chat room. Also, send your topic ideas, southfloridatribune@gmail.com. So take a breath. Yeah. Okay. Breathtaking. If you want to advertise cost efficiently, give me a call at 954-304-4941. We broadcast live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Our website's www.southfloridatribune.com, Twitter /X@TribuneSouth. Candy Ebling is producing the show tonight as well as does a marvelous job on the website. I have a book out there called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders, available on Kindle and Amazon. And that pretty much talks about old school media versus new school media. And of course, now I'm a part of NGBN TV. So this is a great endeavor. We'll get more details as we continue to go on. You got the logistics earlier. It will be in 85% of the homes in the United States and Canada and 4.1 billion mobile devices. So on behalf of JT Toth and George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Man. I'll thank you for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. We will see you next Monday night. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you.